episode 339 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 16th of June 2025. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
I may be an Iron Maiden as we speak.
Not that again. Graham.
Hello.
And Will.
Hello.
Let's get straight on with our discoveries then. And we've got a couple from our patrons. Alexander writes, as you are a technically musical / musically technical bunch, have you heard of Strudel? It's music as code. Check out the example on their Getting Started page. And I asked you, Graham, you must have tried this. You didn't remember it, and then you looked it up and said you have actually reviewed this.
Yeah, it did look a little bit familiar, but there's quite a few things like this. Also, I'm really grateful to Alexander because I think I asked for discoveries related to music as code. And I'd completely forgotten about it. A couple of years ago, I wrote about it in FOSS Picks. And it's definitely worth me having another look, because that's exactly what I wanted, something that was a little bit lighter, I suppose, than Sonic Pi, but also potentially deeper if you want to go down that kind of rabbit hole. And it looks exactly that.
Yeah, this example does look a little bit more complex than Sonic Pi.
Yeah, and I like the design. I like the documentation and everything in it. So it makes me want to try it.
This looks like you need to know an awful lot of music theory, like B flat major or minor 9. I don't know what that chord is.
So is this command line sound trackers, or is it describing the voices themselves, like through mathematical constructs?
Yeah, so I mean, it's got sound generation in it, and you can create your own sounds with C Sound, but mostly all of that you can just kind of use from the functions that are provided and algorithmically create sequences of note data based on your own kind of tuning or chording or voicing. I think you can create the sounds that are included in the toolkit and just play notes probably with just a couple of lines. But also, music is kind of algorithmic. And the way that most people produce music digitally is by clicking on a piano roll kind of matrix or recording, whereas there should be a way of describing the algorithm of a series of notes and allowing that to kind of evolve or vary in a way that you want to have some kind of artistic control over. And I think that's where these programmatic solutions are really interesting.
It takes the performance out of it, which is neither a good nor bad thing. It just is a thing. Like, some people are great at performing and some people are better at conceptualizing. And it suits a more conceptual sense of music rather than just, I'm going to get a guitar and play some riffs on it.
Oh, I totally agree. And it's a different kind of expression. I mean, people like Martin Rushent, who was the programmer of the very early Human League records, if you know those. Things like Don't You Want Me Baby. If you listen to the way it's programmed, that's Martin Rushent basically writing assembler language for an early sequencer, where it's all kind of written down on a piece of paper and then he programs it so specifically. And the sound, that exact sound, is, to me, incredibly expressive. It's brilliant.
All right. Christian writes, feedback from a few years ago. You had rsync in your finds, but couldn't be bothered to install it with pip. I've now made a Go binary that you can install with curl to bash because I know how you love those.
I'm calling the police.
I recall rsync being just a kind of more advanced version of rsync.
Yeah, it's quite a pretty version of rsync, and it's got some nice progress bar stuff and all that. It's kind of a bit like a TUI, I guess. Well, kind of.
I think they should have called it Inky Arse.
Well, we'll link to it in the show notes. I don't know if I can be asked with this either. Sorry, Christian, but
oh dear.
I'm not doing a bloody curl to bash installation of...
You don't have to do that, you know.
I know. But yes, it's a better version of rsync, but do I really need a better version of rsync?
Yes.
Nah. All right. Will, Spring.
A little while ago, we talked about how Red Alert and Command & Conquer were now open source, which was very exciting. And in my process of poking around the internet, looking at options to run that code, prior to that point, I came across Spring, which is a real-time strategy engine which has literally tens of other games built upon it. It's a real-time engine with, tens of games that are all kind of effectively Command and Conquer, but all very subtly different. The entire thing is open source. You can run it on your LAN. You can run it over the internet for multiplayer. It has a load of really good features specifically aimed at, in my opinion, streaming the commentary, I suppose, so that you can see in overview the whole map and what people are doing all at the same time as a kind of observer, which I thought was quite interesting. There are even proprietary games built on the engine, most of which are free to play, but the IP perhaps is owned by somebody else. For example, there's a Star Wars game that is built on top of it. So it's a free game engine. You can build your own multiplayer real-time strategy game on it if you want, or if you don't want to. There are tens of games that you can download and play completely for free.
Phelim, ice cream.
Yeah, so obviously some people use debuggers, and those people are clearly witches and should be burnt at the stake. And the rest of us that are humans use print statements.
Yay.
You can have magic print statements that you can wrap around code. It will then print out before it runs a function, then what the function returns, and all sorts of things like that. And you don't have to do anything more than just say IC dot, and then the thing that you want to do, and job is done. Nice and easy. You can customize the output from it. You can also put all of that code in there, preceding it, and then you can disable it at the start. So you could have a flag to run in debug mode, or to be, super verbose, and then it can output all that stuff. You can leave all that code in there so it won't break if you turn it to false, and then it allows you to have the exact same code with your debugger, not accidentally ship a debug statement somewhere, or have to then look at a piece of code and go, fuck, it doesn't have any of the debug things built in. I now need to swap the version, and then that cocks it up because they're actually not the same. So, it's a super simple thing. It's actually in the repos on Ubuntu-based systems, probably Debian too, but yeah, I'm sure you can get it through pip or the like. Python 3-ice cream. And it's called ice cream. Everybody likes ice cream. And people who don't like ice cream, do you really trust these people? No, I didn't think so.
Is this like printf debugging?
It is, but it's advanced printf.
Okay.
There's a nice example in the docs, or on the README, about using IC to include the context. And so it will give you line numbers and what line was being run when it printed it out. Like that contextual information is so much more useful than just print statements. So that is really good. And it's like 3 characters to get that output. It's really quick and easy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I love about it, the fact that you can put all that in there and then you can just have a disable at the start and it doesn't break that functionality. So it's all inbuilt there and you can just re-enable it again if you want it. So you don't have to have the 2 different versions of your code, in which case they're obviously going to diverge because you'll fuck something up.
I assumed that this was Python only, but it's got loads of other languages it works in. Go, Java, Ruby, Rust, Dart.
Even PHP.
Even PHP. Amazing.
Well, I've actually tried it and I'm going to start integrating it into lots of projects because, yeah, let's face it, I do put logging in, but oftentimes that doesn't quite give you what you want to do. So, yeah, this is cool.
Well, I have discovered DNS for EU, which is an EU-based DNS resolver, or several actually. They've got one with child protection, one with ad blocking, one with child protection and ad blocking, and one that is just unfiltered. I did try it out, and I felt it wasn't quite as good as AdGuard's public DNS. But this is EU-based, so if you care about that sort of thing, then this is a must, maybe just for your upstream DNS, for your Pi-hole or whatever. Have you thought about this, Phelim?
I have. Now, one funny thing I did find during the week, that some chap has tried to find out how much EU is in DNS for EU. And quite interestingly, he's discovered that their AS number is both, that they have a couple, and one's in the Czech Republic, I believe, but also one's in the UK. Now, that obviously is not a problem for you, but it is for me, and also the fact that the UK is a member of the Five Eyes. So whether that is just their startup, I don't know, or what's gone behind it, but it's very confusing as to how it's set up in terms of, like, is it actually a proper EU thing? And I don't think it is.
Oh.
So I think we need a bit more investigation to see, because it's a strange one.
Right, because they have a map of DNS for EU public resolver locations. and you got Ireland, Spain, France, Netherlands, Germany, Italy, etc., etc., etc. Czechia, as it is now, it's not the Czech Republic. Get with the times, failing.
Oh, when did that happen?
A long time ago.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I went there in 1994, and I think the cheap alcohol as a teenager killed my brain cells, so that was fixed in place.
Nothing in the UK on this map, though.
Interesting. The thick plottins.
Indeed, it does. Okay, this episode is sponsored by Tailscale. Go to tailscale.com/LNL. Tailscale is the easiest way to connect devices and services to each other, wherever they are. Everyone these days has a VPN as a sponsor, but Tailscale isn't like those. This isn't about hiding your browsing habits from coffee shop owners, and it's not about watching Netflix in another country. Tailscale is a proper VPN for connecting your devices securely. It's great for companies, and it's great for self-hosters. Loads of the Late Night Linux family hosts use Tailscale because it gives you the power of WireGuard with a simple and quick setup. I got it up and running in a few minutes without having to open any ports. Tailscale lets you connect anything, anywhere. Provide connectivity to any resource for your organization, from dashboards to a Synology NAS or Windows file server, from self-managed DNS servers to software as a service applications. If you want it off the public internet, Tailscale will provide secure access. Tailscale's personal plan will always be free, and you get up to 100 devices and 3 users for free with no credit card required. So support the show and go to tailscale.com/LNL and try Tailscale out at home or at work today. That's tailscale.com/LNL. On to a bit of admin then. First of all, thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to latenightlinux.com/support. And remember that for various amounts on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed of either just this show or all the shows in the Late Night Linux family. And you even get some episodes early. And if you want to get in contact, you can email show@latenightlinux.com. In an echo of the distant past, 2 city governments in Denmark are moving away from Microsoft amid Trump and US big tech concerns. And also, we're done with Teams. German state hits uninstall on Microsoft. So those with long memories will remember that this was tried in Germany and it did not work out long term. But I think that things are different this time. I think that governments in Europe and around the world are starting to think about moving to open source alternatives for different reasons this time. And I think because of those different reasons, it's more likely to succeed.
I think it's very interesting that over the years where we've talked about these sorts of stories before, the primary focus has been the financial aspect of it. And the kind of subtext has been, but you get to be in control and you're not having to potentially expose your data to other people. And in the end, it was like a pure political move that has prompted this. Just the fact that people don't trust Trump not to change the laws underneath them. The unknowns about what may or may not happen next week in business dealings with the US seems to be the catalyst for all this, finally.
Well, yeah, and the political aspect of, is NATO finished? Are America really Europe's ally anymore? More uncertainty. And where you have uncertainty, you seek certainty. And you look at something like LibreOffice, you look at something like Linux, that seems more certain. It's a community effort. It's open source. Even if the Document Foundation went away tomorrow, the code would still be there. Someone could pick it up. The government could pay someone to work on it.
Or multiple governments could pull together.
Yeah.
The real beauty of it, I do worry that this is going to be let's move another headquarters to insert random city there. They are really annoying, but I think this is why this actual reason for it is so good, in the fact that not to be anti-American, but you can't not be American by being an American company, so they don't have the usual tools at their disposal to sort of bully their way in somewhere.
I mean, Graham, you covered the last effort in Germany. I mean, it was the late 90s, wasn't it, that they started that?
That's right. Yeah, the Linux in Munich.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think it was I can't quite remember now, but it was a change of political leadership in Munich that ultimately led to them, using it to renegotiate with Microsoft. At the time that we interviewed them, I think in 2014 or something like that, it was still operating under the premise that it was working and people were finding it useful. I think it was just before the end. And they were using an old KD desktop. There was an awful lot of stuff that could be improved, but the idea was sound. And I've always been kind of staggered by this. You know, all the features you find in a modern Office suite, by the way, most of us don't need. Open source is more than adequate for most things. I've never understood why our taxes are spent on expensive proprietary software other than this kind of negotiating ability. And I totally agree with what you're saying, that this change in the status quo, the change in the way that we have to think strategically about control of our own infrastructure might really do it in some cases.
In terms of defense, France was always people sort of chuckling by the fact that they seemed to do everything they wanted on their own. You know, they had their own companies like Tails and stuff like that, and Dassault. And, you know, they would make their own jets, make their own radars, make everything like that. And the reason was what is exactly that has occurred with the likes of Trump and embargoes, or, you know, oh, we're not pals with you now and we're not going to pay because you're not paying, and oh, God knows what. But, you know, that seems like that is the proper solution to have, is to make sure you are sovereign. I hate that word so much for all of the connotations that it brings with cryptocurrency, but it does make sense for software and for your infrastructure, especially for public money funded projects.
We did get an email about this from someone from Denmark who would prefer to stay anonymous, posing the question, is Linux and open source really ready for this? You know, you think about a big workplace with like 40,000 employees. Is the Linux and open source ecosystem really ready for these huge installations?
I think it's a really good question. Linux, they invested a lot of money in supporting people. That was a lot of what they were doing, was answering the phone to people who don't know what an operating system is, don't know what an Office suite is, because they're so used to the defaults being the language of how people use computers. It's difficult even to say this is an alternative when people just think that Word is the way that you create documents on something. But where there's a will, there's a way. And I think this is enough of a reason for people to have to relearn, and to maybe force them to relearn from a governmental perspective. But yes, I think that open source needs to do more. I think we can make things a lot easier to use. Maybe it needs some money and scrutiny. I don't know.
I think we're in a better place than we have been ever before, in so much as the users of software are, I would say, almost all smartphone owners. And so the idea of using a computer is not alien to people now. And so the idea that the start menu isn't exactly where it was last time is perhaps less scary to people. You know, you upgrade your iPhone version or your Android version, you get a slightly different UI. You have to learn how it works. That had never really happened before, but now it happens, I'd say, probably every couple of years. So I think people are more open to the idea of using something different, whereas previously the only game in town was Microsoft Windows. I also think that the core engineering base, software engineering base, is more Linux-centric than it's ever been. And I think that the IT support engineer base is more Linux-friendly than it ever has been before. 10 years ago, well, maybe that's not fair, 20 years ago, if you wanted to get ahead in IT support, you learned Windows and all its associated technologies. I don't believe that's the case anymore. I've no evidence for that other than gut feel. But it feels like it's not cool anymore. Things that are interesting are cloud, and cloud is Linux, and therefore Linux is much more interesting. So I think that there are more people out there who can support this than there ever have been before.
I don't know about that. I think that IT support still very much is Windows. You know, in most businesses, they're all using Windows, on the clients at least. I think there's probably more people who can support it, but yeah, I don't know about this idea of people who are used to smartphones and therefore it's not going to be as much of a difference to them. I think you might be right there, because I think about a young person that I know who is at university, who I recently saw working on one of their university assignments. And obviously, this person was using ChatGPT to do the assignment for them, but then also editing it and writing, and was sitting there tapping on a phone. It's like, well, why are you right? Oh, it's quicker to type on my phone than on a laptop. So, that young person who then goes into the workplace using a laptop, they're not going to really be used to one either way, are they? Whether that is Mac, Windows, or one of the various flavors of Linux. So really, as long as the applications they're using are roughly similar, that's really all that matters. As long as the infrastructure works and the applications work, I mean, that is a bit of a sticking point, I think, the applications. When it comes to an Office suite, yeah, LibreOffice and Microsoft Office are not hugely different, and people are used to Google Docs and stuff like that. But then your specialist stuff, if they're going into an architecture practice or if they're going into a music studio or whatever, yeah, there are some alternatives to the big software, but they are going to be using the industry standards, which need Windows or a Mac to run on. And Macs are too expensive generally in the enterprise, so it's all Windows.
Yeah, but hold on. We're talking about a government thing here, and it's going to be documents, and it's going to be using some web-based payment system that is part of the governance model of that town or city or whatever. And I think that's exactly where it should be, because what you have to do is say, well, we can spend all of this money on Microsoft, which is essentially shipping the money out of the jurisdiction, or we can use this money, which is potentially less or similar, but at least it's getting invested into local IT support companies or groups or whatever. And that's not to be insular, but it's to be, you're just pissing money away at that point. In which case you're saying, well, do we buy an MRI machine for the hospital or upgrade everybody's computer to Windows 11 because apparently we have a whole bunch of crap computers that are only 3 years old and aren't compatible? It's like, no, fuck right off.
3 years old. Come on. You're talking about stuff from 2018. Well, before 2018.
Whatever, but if you tell me that I can't run a browser, that's ludicrous. There is no reason for this culling of equipment. And any government office is not going to have anything newer than that. I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, and you look at the sort of third, fourth generation i5 machines that you can buy for peanuts now, and they are perfectly capable of running Linux. And they're going to be a lot nicer of an experience running Linux than Windows. But you can't just expect to just install Linux on a load of machines and have it be pain-free and not have it cost loads of money in people's time. I mean, that's what they saw in Munich all those years ago.
Yeah, but they did it right. That's the thing. All the problem that came in there was the fact that somebody came in with a political agenda because he'd been, allegedly, he liked Microsoft more. Therefore, they all had to change it based on a whim of a single guy who was the mayor. That can't happen if you do things properly. You should set that up to protect that environment because they educated users. And I think generally the users were, yeah, whatever. It's a spreadsheet. How much do you want your spreadsheet to look different than the other spreadsheet, which also looks identical to this? Like, it's like, just get over it. Like, it's not that hard.
Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when it'll probably be news and stuff, but we'll have to see. Until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.